right, how's everyone this morning? Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. So let me start by, first of all, telling you who I am. I'm Pat Coulter, not Dorothy King. I know we're sisters, you know, but that's okay, just in case you get us mixed up. And I want to welcome you to the League of Women Voters Pasadena area's 2019-2020 kickoff member meeting. Can you believe it? I do hope that all of you had a beautiful summer. I hope you had lots of fun and time with your family and your friends, traveling, doing all the wonderful things that we do over the summer, maybe just relaxing and taking it easy. And you're back now, ready to roll up your sleeves, get out there and go to work with the League of Women Voters for what will be one of the busiest years we've ever had. So are you with me on this one? Good. Now, just in case and just as a reminder, the League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization that encourages informed, and then I like the second word, active participation in government. We do three things. We inform voters and non-voters about the process and how to become a voter. We work to increase everyone's understanding of major public policy issues. And three, we influence public policy through education and advocacy. So that's what the League of Women Voters is all about, both here in the Pasadena area, throughout the state of California, and across the United States. So if you are a new or newer, meaning we haven't yet seen you very much at our league meetings, so if you've just been around the league for a while but haven't been to a league meeting, I'm going to call you newer, okay? But if you are new or newer league member, or you're attending your first league day, would you please stand or raise your hand? Stand, please. Stand. All right, stay standing. Stay standing. Stay. Look at that. Now, while you're standing, I'm going to ask Marianne to come around. And Marianne, okay, she's going to give you a wristband, and that wristband. All right, they have one already. Does she have one right here in front of you? Jackie has one. All right, do you have one? All right, over here, Marianne. All right, she's giving you a wristband, and this wristband is to keep us, I guess, in the back of our mind that we remember that the League of Women Voters is moving into its centennial year, that we will turn 100 on February 14th, 2020. All right. So we want you to wear these. We want you to, put it where you put your other little things that you put on your arms and wear it, because we want you to wear it for a number of reasons. You're proud of being a part of the league. Number two, we want someone to ask you, what's that you're doing? And you say, oh, that's the League of Women Voters. Don't you want to get involved with us? And then thirdly, we want you to say, we're celebrating 100 years and the league is 100 years strong, okay? We got that, all right. So as I bring up Monica Hubbard, who is a longstanding league member and has been a major contributor and activist in this movement, I want to first share a tweet with you. Now, when I say tweet, how many of you know what I'm talking about? Okay, that's good. All right, now before the end of the year, before the end of 2019, everybody's going to know what we mean by tweet. All right, that's a promise. So LWV tweeted on August 26th which was Women's Equality Day, this was our tweet, and I quote, August 26 commemorates the 1920 adoption of the 19th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, prohibiting our government from denying the right to vote on the basis of sex. Seems so clear and so obvious, but many of us have moms, grandmoms, aunties, aunts, uncles who were denied the vote. And so with that, I want to segue to Monica to get to our subject for today. Thank you.
So you all Fuhrman's political activities in the September voter. I wanted to give you a little bit more information about Jon's background. Jon has been incredibly generous with his time and expertise. He got some predictions exceptionally right, like predicting Trump would be the GOP nominee in September 2015, and predicting in October 2008 that Obama would win with 375 electoral votes. He actually got 365, failing to carry Missouri, which Jon thought he would win. But he also got a few spectacularly wrong, and he shared these with me. He said he was sure that Hillary would win and predicted that Michael Dukakis would win in a landslide. Our speaker, Jon Fuhrman.
I appreciate that very kind introduction. It's a pleasure to be here with you this morning, talk about elections. It's extraordinary in a sense that something so fundamental and so basic to our democracy, whether elections still work, is actually a reasonable question these days, and demands a thoughtful answer rather than just say, well, of course they do, yeah. I'd also like to recognize the special guest we've got today, Mark Jomsky, who actually knows more about elections than I do, our city clerk. So when you see Mark roll his eyes, you'll know that, oh, Jon didn't get that quite right. So our topic this morning was, do elections still work? Is your vote safe? Is everyone's vote safe? And I thought I would extend that a little bit to include the question of, does your vote count? Does everyone's vote count? And does everyone get to vote? Because before your vote can count, you have to be able to cast a vote. And that also is an interesting question these days. So in case any of you doze off after our wonderful breakfast here or have to leave early, if we could have the next screen. Spoiler alert, the answers are, do elections still work? Yes, they do. Yes, they do. Is your vote safe? Yes, it is. Is everyone's vote safe? Yes, pretty much, more or less. Pretty much yes. Does your vote count? Yes, it does. Does everyone's vote count? Yeah, pretty much. Does everyone get to vote? Fortunately, mostly yes. There are some exceptions in the country, and there's some work that we still need to be doing. And in particular, I wanted to talk about 3 states that I think have particular problems in that area: Florida, Georgia, and Wisconsin. And we'll come back to that at the end of the presentation. But by and large, the elections work, your vote's safe, people's votes are safe. Pretty much everyone gets to vote who is willing to take the time to go ahead and register and show up on election day or vote by absentee ballot. Takes a little bit of effort, not much, but if you want to make that effort, pretty much everyone gets to vote. Okay, if we could have the next slide, please. For the question of, is your vote safe and is everyone's vote safe, first I wanted to talk about in the state of California and divide that in 2 parts, the rest of the state and Los Angeles County. Now, how many of you here have served as precinct polling inspectors or clerks on election day? Okay. How many of you have actually hosted the polling station in your house or in your living room or in your garage? A few there. Okay, all of you, raise your right hand. say I am, you are now officially part of the Dinosaur Society. Because precinct polling places are gone, a thing of history, no more. We may regret that, but times are moving on. In most of the state, most counties in 2020 are going to all-mail ballots. That is, instead of having to sign up to get an absentee ballot or to request one because you're going to be gone this election day, everyone gets an absentee ballot automatically, right off the book, no more. And in fact, most people will be encouraged to vote by mail. There will be a few polling stations in counties in the rest of the state for in-person voting, for late voting. In LA County, we're going to have lots of polling stations. Not as many as we have in precincts, but still a lot of polling stations. And starting about a week and a half, essentially the weekend before Election Day, we'll start having polling places open for early voting in LA County, and we'll start out with a modest number, and the number will increase during that week, and there'll be even more on the weekend before election and on Election Day. So people can go to that polling station and vote, or if you are a permanent absentee voter, you'll get your absentee ballot, you can mail it in. If you want an absentee ballot, you can request it and you can mail that in. When you go to one of these polling stations, and you can go to a polling station anywhere in the county, where you work, where you live, if you're down in Long Beach visiting the Queen Mary, stop by a polling station and tell them your name and address, and they'll have a system that will look you up in the county rolls, figure out where you live, and give you the right ballot, so that even if you're in Long Beach, you'll be able to vote for Chris Holden in Pasadena, for Anthony Portantino, for Terry Tornick, for Laura Friedman in Glendale, for Terry Tornick for mayor of Pasadena. They will know exactly the people that should be on your ballot, and they will print a ballot so you can vote for the appropriate people. Or their opponents, if you want to vote for their opponents, equally so. So there'll be lots of polling stations that will do this, and they will be able electronically to figure out where you are and also record the fact that you're voting. So you can't go down to Long Beach and then come back up here and vote in the same day. Yeah. There'll be security provisions to ensure that you don't vote twice, or if you are signed up for an absentee ballot and you lose it, you can vote in person, but then you find it and you send it in also, they won't count both of them. They'll have provisions to ensure that you can vote, but just once, which, that's pretty fair. From a security perspective, if we could have the next screen, mail ballots are actually harder to interfere with or hack into. So it's actually an improvement in overall ballot security. And there are a few reasons for this. One, you start with a centralized roll, the basic list of voters who are eligible to vote. And these are maintained by each county, but they're backups. The state gets copies of those. Copies are given to campaigns so they can use, and they know which voters to contact. So if something happens, if somehow that central list gets screwed up, a lot of people are looking at this, and any irregularities are likely to be noticed fairly quickly and fairly early in the process, and counties actually have pretty good security on these rolls. It's not just open on the internet that you can add your name. There's a process they go through, their internal checks and balances, so it's pretty safe. When you have mail ballots, they're mailed out to you a month before Election Day. And of course, before they're mailed, they have to be printed up and prepared and gotten all together. So that process starts a couple of months beforehand. So again, we're starting so early in the process that if a malevolent actor wanted to try to interfere with the process, they have to be thinking about doing this in May and June of 2020. And again, that gives us plenty of time to discover and counteract and correct any problems that are introduced. We also have a new version of absentee ballots. Now, who here typically has voted by absentee? Okay, so you remember you get these little cards with itsy-bitsy little squares and rows of these squares and 1 to 75 and then 76 to 150 and go down and down and down. And then you have to open your sample ballot and figure, okay, I want to vote for Hillary Clinton. That's number 86. So I have to find 86 and color it in. But stay inside the lines. If you color outside the lines, you're in trouble. The whole ballot might be ruined. Color in that little square and then go on to the next one, and do it. And then if you decide, uh-oh, did I color in 86 or 87? Oh, no, I ruined it. I have to get a new ballot. No more. The new absentee ballot style has the names and sort of big circles on it so you can see who you're voting for right there. You don't need to cross-reference the sample ballot. Much easier to use. But also, they provide a paper trail. When these absentee ballots are sent in to be tallied and counted in the central by the county in the central facility, we have a set of paper copies. And we can do an audit. And you can go back and you can count in a particular precinct or a particular area. You can count the actual number of sample ballots or absentee ballots that have been turned in and see how many votes were cast for Hillary and how many for Donald Trump, and see if that tallies with what the machines presented. So you have this ability to audit and trace because you have paper ballots. Also, you have numerical checks. For every sample ballot, you have an envelope that should have your signature. So the number of ballots cast matches the number of envelopes with signatures of voters that have been sent in. How many of you remember when you signed in on the index roster before you are given a ballot, you sign your name, and if you are doing the precinct operation, they count up the number of signatures and count the number of ballots, and you have 207 ballots and 205 signatures. All right, so you're off a little bit. Someone forgot to sign. Okay. But if you have 207 ballots and 112 signatures, you can be sure someone in the registrar's office was going to see that. And all sorts of red flags are going up. And they're going to come back and ask you, excuse me, what happened here? Where are these other 100 ballots come from? We have similar checks with the mail ballots so that we have assurance that the number of ballots cast matches a count of the actual voters who voted. Okay, if we could have the next slide, please. The other part of the ballot process is once you get ballots, how you count them. And of course, this is a significant automated process. We have procedures. We used to have machines that would scan the little cards. Now they have to be changed a little to scan the larger ballots. But these software and these machines are maintained by counties, and they're ensured that once the software has been in place and is tested, that they're air-gapped. That is, you can't hack into a machine that's not connected to the web. So if you just pull the plug, pull the wire that connects to the web, no one can get to it anymore. That's one of the advantages that having the centralized counting by counties is done. They have much more physical and IT control over those machines to ensure their safety, to ensure the physical safety of those machines, that no unauthorized people get in. They can seal the entry so you can't add software to the machine even though it's not connected to the net. There are pre-election tests to show that the software is working, and these are open to observation by people delegated by any of the political parties. So members of the public can watch as these tests are done. After the election, there are audits done. People can watch the actual counting. When provisional ballots are sent in, individuals from the public can observe the counting of provisional ballots and the qualification of provisional ballots. In fact, I did that on an election fairly recently in Mark's office. We watched as he went through a stack of provisional ballots and said, oh, this signature matches, oh, this one not so good, you know. And individuals from both sides could observe and object and question. So the systems work pretty well. We have paper trails, we have security, we have transparency and visibility to the public. So those are all things that add to the security of our elections and give you confidence that in fact the elections are working and that your vote is being counted appropriately. And at least in California, basically that's the same system. Everyone else's vote is being counted appropriately as well. One other...
Some of us are interested in getting out the vote. You used to be able to go in to the precincts and figure out who had voted and who had not. So
I think that ability will still be there. That is, as people vote, either by absentee or in person at polling stations, the registrar, I believe, will still track those votes that have been cast and on a daily basis put out lists of who's voted and who hasn't voted. And political campaigns pay a lot of attention to that. Certainly when we go to all absentee balloting, we'll be doing that. And we have a lot of experience doing absentee ballot sweeps, going to people who have received absentee ballots, say, gee, you know, you should have gotten yours. The registrar hasn't received it. Have you mailed it in yet? Do you need help mailing it in? One of the changes they've made is having postage paid envelopes, so you don't have to put a stamp on it. You can just put it in the mail. So the county and the state have moved to try to make voting easier, simpler, and encourage people to participate. Now, another aspect of election security is IT security. How confident are we that people can't get into the system and do something? One of the things, I served for a number of years on Los Angeles County's Information Systems Commission, and we met frequently with the Chief Information Officer for the county and also the Chief Information Security Officer for the county. And one of the things the county has done is do anti-phishing training to all of its personnel. Now, how many of you know what phishing is? You remember, this is what got Leon Panetta and the DNC into trouble. How many of you have gotten an email from your bank, or who said they were from your bank, saying, oh, no, we're doing a system upgrade, your account's going to be frozen tomorrow, you need to log in and reset your password? Yeah? Wrong. How many of you gotten an email from FedEx saying, oh, there's a package waiting for you, please click on this? Wrong. Don't click. You can get the email, you can open the email, but don't click on the attachment. That's how malware gets in, that's how ransomware gets into your system. Now, and these people, now it used to be, it was pretty obvious when they spelled Bank of America with a K. They said, we're from Wells Fargo. Okay, it was a pretty easy clue. But they're getting pretty sophisticated. They're using all the logos now. It looks genuine. They're getting better at hiding the real source of the email. They're even, if you're, let's say, a Los Angeles County Sheriff's Lieutenant, and you get a message saying, Assistant Sheriff Gutierrez asked that you review this slide deck before we send it on to the sheriff and the board. And in fact, you're in the group that works for Assistant Sheriff Gutierrez, who is a real person, because she was in the paper. Her picture was in the paper, standing next to Alex Villanueva. So they know the name, and they know the areas of the sheriff's office that report into her. So in fact, she's your boss's boss's boss, and she's asking you to review this slide deck. I better review the slide deck. Wrong. That's exactly the sort of thing that malware and ransomware uses to get in. They're getting very slick about this. In LA County, years ago, as email systems grew up, each department had their own email system. And it took years for the county to centralize their email system into one single system. But the benefit of that is that the county was able to install stronger firewalls, and not just firewalls, but lists, blacklists and whitelists, who should be allowed to send email into the county from outside, who shouldn't. The county system intercepts 96% of all emails sent to county people before they show up on your desktop, because they're garbage, they're spam, or they're malware. 96% of all the emails coming into the county get trashed up front before you actually see them. So those sorts of security protections can be implemented by larger counties and better organizations. Other things that the counties do, they continually upgrade their computers. You remember years ago, Windows XP was going off support, was aged out, and Microsoft was saying we're not going to support it anymore. Well, there are thousands of computers using the XP system, and the central IT organization forced the county to get rid of all of them. Now Windows 7 is coming to the end of its support level, and there are issues with lots of computers using Windows 7 that by early next year will no longer be eligible for support or upgrades or improved antiviral protections. We have to get off those. Larger organizations like LA County are able to do that, like the state of California, like most counties in California. Smaller counties, if you're in Mono or Yolo or Humboldt, they don't have the resources and they're not willing to dedicate the resources that they should to IT security, but most larger organizations are. So basically, statewide in California, the extent of IT security may vary by county. By and large, it's pretty good. The Secretary of State goes to, I think, significant measures to provide strong oversight and ensure that countywide systems are all meeting statewide standards. Most of the counties are going to AV voting exclusively, which is better. We have paper trails, we have air-gapped tally systems, we have open testing and audits. So by and large, California is pretty good. But our biggest safety factor is essentially that we're a boring target. No one really cares about influencing California's elections. They know how it's going to turn out, so we're not a prime target. Other states, like Wisconsin, like Florida, are really much more interesting as targets, and they have much more to be concerned about than we do, for better or for worse. So, going on to the rest of the country. In general, it's pretty safe. IT security is better in big states and big counties. It could be improved, especially in the smaller counties. But even some larger cities, you may have seen in the news recently, Baltimore was hit by ransomware. Basically, the entire city's municipal computer systems were struck. Everything was encrypted. They refused to pay the ransom. They got their systems back online in a week or two. Cost them $17 million. But, they survived. 23 Texas towns were hit essentially simultaneously over the course of 2 or 3 days with the ransomware. Atlanta was hit with the ransomware attacks. So even the larger entities, people are discovering that IT security, as boring as it is, was something we really should have been spending more money on than we have been and paying more attention to. Of course, typically the CIOs get fired after that happens, but even though they'd been complaining that you weren't funding their budget requests, but no, c'est la vie. In general, awareness is much higher. about the issue of security, about the need to prevent interference, about heightened scrutiny and heightened surveillance to detect attempts to interfere with elections, election processing, election files. Press attention is more intense, so they're watching as well. There's stronger state-level involvement. Secretary of State offices at the state level have been essentially pretty much have gotten the message and found religion and are paying significantly more attention than they used to. There is some federal support, some money, not much, not nearly as much as there should be, but some money for improving election systems. Most counties use centralized tallying. Not everyone does, but most. My first memory of elections is going in to vote in New York with my parents before I was old enough to vote, but they let me come into the ballot booth with them. And we had these election machines. You'd push the lever and the curtains would close, and there'd be all these little digit things, and you vote for this person, vote for that person, or you could vote for the straight party line, and then you pull the lever down, and everything clicks in, and the curtains open, and it's recorded your vote, and there were little tally counters as to who got how many votes. Of course, those machines, don't have paper trails, so you don't know that your vote actually got counted. Most counties now have paper backups, but not all. Those sort of ballot machines where the counting is done at the ballot, at the place you cast your ballot, is still modestly common across the country, and that's a problem.
But they can't do it instantly. They have to wait till the polls close.
They wait till the polls close to count the actual, to look at the results and transmit those to the central office. But the question is, how do you know the machine has been operating properly? How do you know the numbers are transmitted faithfully? So it's better to have a paper trail, better to have a paper evidence that you know how your ballot has been cast, and you know that there's a way of going back and checking to see that the counts match. On the next screen, does your vote count? Yes, it does. We've had lots of experiences with close elections, and every vote really does matter. You remember Florida, year 2000, the hanging chads in Miami-Dade County and so on, a presidential race decided by maybe 535 votes, maybe more, maybe less, who knows? We never quite did the recount. So, Minnesota in 2008, a U.S. Senate race decided by 312 votes out of 3 million. In New Hampshire in 2016, a Senate race decided by 1,017 votes out of 700,000, 0.15% margin. And, these close elections, your vote doesn't merely elect the person. This has substantial policy implications. In 2016, Maggie Hassan was elected in New Hampshire by that 1,000-vote margin, and Catherine Cortez Masto was elected from Nevada, both women Democrats, defeating incumbent Republicans. In 2017, the Affordable Care Act, the attempt to repeal the Affordable Care Act in the U.S. Senate failed when Senator McCain voted no, so it went from 50-50 to 51 against, 49 in favor. Among those 51 votes against repeal were Maggie Hassan and Catherine Cortez Masto. These two women elected in 2016. Without their votes, we would have been back, even with Senator McCain, we would have been back at 50-50. Vice President Pence cast the deciding vote in favor of repeal, and the Affordable Care Act would have been gone without that election. In Minnesota, in 2008, when Al Franken was elected by 312 votes, he was the 60th vote Democrats needed in the U.S. Senate to defeat the filibuster and enact the Affordable Care Act in the first place. So these close elections not only put someone in office, but that person then casts votes that can be hugely impactful on public policy and on the welfare of the country, one way or another. And of course, back here in Pasadena, right here, in 1983, how many of you remember the election for Community College Board of Trustees? Sue Mealy, a longtime league member. First election ended in a tie. And at that time, the government code said, well, if it's a tie, you decide the tie by casting lots. But this was an educational institution under the Ed Code, and the Ed Code was silent. So they had a new election, had a do-over, which Sue Mealy won easily, and went on to serve on the Community College Board for 28 years, I think. So these tie votes, these close elections matter. Your vote matters. It's important. On the next page, the question is, let's see. Whoops, I skipped one. So does your vote count? So on the national picture, is your vote counted in California? Yes, absolutely. Rest of the country, pretty much. Can everyone vote so that your vote gets counted? Pretty much yes. There are a few exceptions. Most states, by and large, have pretty good systems of voter registration, of maintaining people on the registration polls. Registration is relatively easy. You can often do it from the Department of Motor Vehicles if they don't screw up their IT system. You know? You can do it lots of places, so it's not hard to register to vote. It's a little bit of a barrier, but it's pretty modest. And generally, as long as you vote once at least every 4 or 6 years, your name stays on the polls, on the list of registered voters indefinitely. Oh, if you move, you're supposed to update it and change your address and so on, but by and large, it's relatively easy to get registered. There are a few, and then once you're registered, to actually go and vote. I think there's still a few exceptions, and I wanted to mention those because these are issues I know that the League has addressed from a national perspective, and I hope the League will continue to address and to push for reforms in some of these areas. In Florida, in particular, you may recall there was, in 2018, the Florida, on a statewide basis, voters were voting on Proposition 4, which would have, and did, and was enacted, modified their state constitution so that felons who had completed their sentence, not felons in jail, people who had served their time, completed their sentence, finished parole if they had parole, all done, could get the right to vote back. The state constitution, as does a number of other states, said that once you are convicted of a felony, you forever lost your right to vote. However minor the felony may be, for grand larceny, for having marijuana with intent to sell, for a bar fight, whatever it may be, if you were convicted of a felony, you could not ever vote again, period. Florida said, you know, we ought to change this. And in fact, over 60% of the voting population supported that change. And it was enacted, and they needed a 60% majority by their state constitutional rules to amend the Constitution. It passed by well over 60%. The state constitution was amended. However, the legislature, in implementing this change, said, well, actually, the wording said if you finished your sentence, you're completing the sentence. So, you know, sentence could be interpreted as including all the fines and all the restitution that you are required. Now you think, okay, well, if you get convicted, you pay your penalty. Of course, many of the people convicted have no money, and certainly don't have any money if they've been in jail for 3 or 4 years. So how are they ever going to repay the fine? Well, oh, too bad. No, you don't get to vote. So this now is a subject of substantial litigation. It seems to me pretty much like a poll tax, which is flatly prohibited by an amendment to the federal Constitution. You cannot require someone to pay money to vote. Voting is a fundamental right, and it's not dependent on your economic status or your ability to pay, however small that fee may be, or however large it may be in some cases. So I don't know where that legal fight is going to turn out. This is still a work in progress, but other states still have the constitutional provision prohibiting felons from voting for the rest of their lives once they have been convicted. And clearly, I think that is something that we ought to look at on a national level, and at least state by state where we can encourage states to, as Florida has done, to amend that provision and return the right to vote to many of those folks, many of whom come from communities of color. And it's clear from the Republican state legislature's perspective in Florida, they perceived these people as being more likely to vote for Democrats and were not interested in boosting potential Democratic votes. So they, from a relatively partisan perspective, said, well, we need to fight this any way we can, and came up with the cleverest excuse they could find to delay or stand in the way of implementation of that change approved by the voters. In Wisconsin, they have been one of the leaders in voter suppression, in using voter ID laws to complicate and encumber the ability of individuals to vote. They've been particularly active in purging rolls, in requiring IDs, checking for non-citizen voting, in defining IDs in a way that makes it difficult. For instance, for college students, they decided, well, a college ID, no, not good enough, not good enough. Have to get a utility bill or something like that to show where you live. Well, I live in the dorm. I don't pay utilities. Oh, too bad. No. So they found ways to make it difficult for people to participate. And as a result of this, you saw in 2016, the turnout in Milwaukee, which has a large African-American community, dropped by 41,000 votes compared to the turnout in 2012. President Trump's margin statewide was 22,000. So this drop in turnout, now some of that could well have been due to the fact that, in fact, President Obama was the first African American to run for president in 2008, to run for re-election in 2012. Not at all surprising, a huge interest and huge support in the minority community. Some of that support not as enthusiastic for Hillary as it was for him, so there could be some drop-off. But it's, I think, clear to many observers that these voter ID laws that were enacted in 2014 clearly had an impact and were a barrier and did prevent or discourage people from voting. And in fact, nationwide, African American turnout exceeded or equaled turnout in the white community in 2008 and 2012, dropped significantly, 6 percentage points, compared to the white community in 2016. And some of this, again, was the fact that President Obama wasn't on the ticket again, but some of it also was clearly due to attempts to encumber, discourage, and outright intimidate people from voting. In Georgia, which is one of my favorite examples on the next slide, these are some interesting and cautionary tales. On the one hand, it's good that we know about this. People are paying attention. And because these are the only examples we know of, it's probably relatively rare. On the other hand, it's a little frightening, these examples. So in 2018, in the lieutenant governor's race, 159,000 fewer votes were cast than in the governor's race. Now, that's not overly surprising. People vote for the top of the ticket, and then they get bored, or they don't care, or so on. Okay, so some people stop voting as you go down the ticket. But the number of votes statewide cast for the lieutenant governor was 80,000 less than votes for other statewide offices lower down on the ticket. So it's like you went, vote for governor, skip, vote, vote, vote. Well, that doesn't sound very likely. There were a significant decline in the lieutenant governor votes cast tallied from voting machines in 101 of the 157 counties. That decline wasn't seen in other counties, which is a little odd, and it also wasn't seen in the paper ballots sent in as the paper absentee ballots sent in those same 101 counties. So people voting by absentee ballot, they went all that. People voting by machine, yes, skip, yes, sir. Well, and the declines were most extreme in predominantly African American communities. So that really suggests something screwy is going on with the voting machines. That either they were programmed, they were individually programmed, they were counting wrong. It's unlikely that was entirely a random event. On the next slide, the other interesting observation. In Governor Brian Kemp's home precinct, and he was Secretary of State at the time, in charge of the elections while he was running for governor. Yeah, a little bit of a conflict. Yeah, all right. So they had 7 voting machines in his precinct. And as you go into a voting, it's like going into a voting booth. You go, one person goes here, one person goes there. It's basically a random assortment. It's not like A to B all go here, and C, D, and E go to machine number 2, and so on. It's pretty random. You just go into and whatever voting. So 6 of the 7 voting machines had wins for Democrats in all 3 statewide elections. His precinct is a Democratic precinct, basically. 1 voting machine had wins for Republicans in all 3 elections. So this is the same precinct, the same 400 people that have voted Democratic, pretty much for the last 30 or 40 years. And in 6 of the machines, they're voting Democratic, as they traditionally have done. And in 1 machine, suddenly everyone votes for the Republican. Well, the statistical likelihood of that, given this relatively 400 or 500 voter sample, is less than 1 in a million. Something else was going on with that machine. Either it was erroneously programmed by accident, or it was erroneously programmed intentionally. And it points to, on the one hand, the problem, but on the other hand, the challenge of interfering with an election. When you have voting machines at the individual precincts, you could get to a voting machine and change the logic so that maybe sort of flip it upside down, so votes cast for the Republican actually get counted for the Democrat, votes cast for the Democrat get counted for the Republican, and of course, which precincts you do this in depends on your side. If you want to change the precinct voting machines in San Marino, you may get one effect. If you want to change them in the Northwest Pasadena, you'll have a different impact. On the other hand, to make a substantial impact on the election, there are an awful lot of machines you've got to tamper with. So that gives you some measure of security. If they wanted to have a really big impact on the Georgia elections, there were 7 machines in this one little precinct, and there are probably 5,000 or 6,000 precincts across the state. So you've got to hit a lot of machines. And if that were to happen, incidents like this would be noticed and would lead to press investigations and legal investigations. And it's just difficult for a conspiracy to be that widespread and that intentional and that well executed. Fortunately, by and large, the attempts to interfere with elections generally are not very well thought out. And it's hard to try to interfere with 2,000 voting machines across a whole state. You need a lot of people involved. And conspiracies like that generally, they leak. People talk, they gossip. You know? So there's some security in the breadth and the length of the number of voting machines and the geographic spread of the voting machines that have to be impacted. It's certainly a lot easier to try to change the tally software, say in Fulton County in metropolitan Atlanta. You can have a lot bigger impact interfering with one machine, one piece of software, than you had trying to interfere with 500 voting machines across metropolitan Atlanta. But the city of Atlanta or the county of Fulton has much stronger controls over that one set of software, and it's much easier to observe and monitor and secure than thousands of voting machines scattered around the state. So,
The gal who did not make governor,
Stacey Abrams.
that's right. She had made trying to repair voter suppression
Yes.
as part of her campaign after the election.
Yes.
What was the problem that she was identifying? Not the lieutenant governor, but the governor she shifted.
I think she was looking at reports across Georgia about individuals not being allowed to vote, finding they weren't on the rolls, issues on appropriate voter ID, voter suppression, long lines. So, for instance, choices about how many voting stations and how many voting machines you put in each precinct. Well, Governor Kemp's precinct had 7. Maybe another precinct had 2, and there were 4-hour lines to get through the 2 voting machines. Those are ways that people who are less committed to the nonpartisan principle of equal access and ease of voting for everyone, can game the system to some degree or other. It's true that a lot of people were willing to wait for 4 hours in those lines, and they hung out, and they did it intentionally because they had the feeling that they were not being welcomed and they were going to crash the party anyway. But there were probably people that gave up after 2 hours. So there.
The margin that she lost by.
I think it was about 50,000. It was not much on a statewide. The statewide election is as large as Georgia. Yeah. Question, Rhodey.
John, you haven't mentioned social media, and I worry about attempts by Russia and China, other places, to influence people's thinking so that they actually vote differently. That's different than the problem of counting the votes.
Yes.
Change people's minds. It seems to me that's a bigger threat. They do it either by putting out false information or by blowing up controversial subjects that put people at loggerheads with each other. And that was documented in the Mueller report.
It was well documented. It certainly is true. That's a whole different area in terms of campaigning and orienting or redirecting public discourse and public concern to areas that really are not very valid, and using that as a way to stoke dissensions and to sharpen rivalries and to sharpen insecurities. I think part of the solution to that is a more active press, and certainly people have been alerted to those. The major IT companies, the Twitter and Google and others, are certainly much more attuned to the dangers those provide, to identifying and shutting down pages on Facebook that are actually coming out of Russia, that are paid for, that are doing political advertising but paid for by Russia, which is a violation of our campaign finance laws. It's hard, and it's a bit of a slippery slope between what is legitimate American discourse as opposed to foreign initiated discourse. But that's a whole nother question for another another meeting next year.
I have a question. I don't know if this brings up a can of worms, because we've talked about this a lot, but how do you feel about the Electoral College?
Well, that's a whole different can of worms. I'm a traditionalist. I'm not entirely sure I would go with the nationwide popular vote. It does put particular emphasis on a small number of states, much less emphasis on California, New York, for instance. On the other hand, the variety of states on which it puts emphasis is not bad. You know, it's a system that gives you perhaps a little more clarity than you would if, for instance, the nationwide count was within 535 votes as opposed to the state of Florida, just 535 votes. The idea that you would have to sort of recount nationwide is logistically challenging. So at this point, if I were in the state legislature and voting on the compact, multi-state compact that said my electoral votes are automatically assigned to the candidate that gets the most votes nationally, I think I would vote against that. Yeah.
Well, one of the problems are controversies recently is the idea of harvesting mail ballots. In other words, is people going door to door and saying, have you sent in
your mail ballot out and give it to me, and right. Okay. So there are a couple of issues there. One is, can that lead to situations where people are coerced into voting a particular way, or they give an incomplete ballot to you and you actually fill out the ballot for them and then seal the envelope that they've already signed and drop it in the mail. And most of our prohibitions against ballot harvesting are based on concerns like that, to ensure that people are not unnecessarily or inappropriately pressured to voting one way or another. Once the ballot envelope is signed and sealed, then I think it's not unreasonable to say, okay, here, you can drop it in the mail for me. And in fact, you would never know whether one person dropped it in the mail or another, or one person dropped it off at a polling station on behalf of you because you were too busy to get it in on Tuesday. So I am more comfortable about doing that, and also going door to door and nagging people a little bit to fill out their absentee ballot. It is one of the things that you put on the kitchen counter, and I'll get to it, and then it gets covered up, and then a week passes, and then it's election day, and you still haven't done it. And so some voters need a fair bit of nagging and kicking in their behind to get over the energy barrier to actual vote, and I think that's good. And that's something campaigns have done traditionally and will continue to do.
Do you think that'll increase the turnout of votes?
Yeah, I think it will. So.
Did anything happen with the Georgia, did they have a court case for the Georgia situation you
Not
mentioned?
that I'm aware of.
Your theme today is do elections work, and my question to you is a little tweak on that. Does electing our sheriff work?
Well, I think the election accurately displayed the will of the people. Can the voters of LA County make an informed decision on that office? Oh, that's another question. It's a little bit of an odd office. It's something people don't know how to evaluate candidates on, and don't have, I think, good reference points to evaluate candidates. as opposed to, say, judges. Well, you've got the Bar Association recommendations, you've got Metropolitan Journal, you've got county committee recommendations, you've got input from other attorneys. For the sheriff, you don't really have that. And the issues are often procedural and not necessarily partisan political decisions, but more procedural and technical decisions about how you run a law enforcement organization and how you best ensure both accountability and effectiveness. And I don't know that we have good measures, independent measures, that help us assess one candidate versus another. So that's an interesting question. Ed?
John, so in California, is ballot harvesting, is it illegal? What are the strictures on that in California?
It's legal.
So it is legal?
Legal. It is legal. So we can go door to door, and I can ask Dolores, did you fill out your ballot? Because no, Registrar hasn't gotten it yet. She said, oh, God, it's on here, I'll sign it, and here's the envelope, and I'll take it, and I'll either drop it in the mail, or she can actually authorize me to drop it off at a precinct polling station by putting my name and signing on a special piece on the ballot saying, yes, I can't get there, this person is authorized. Now, it used to be that only family members and grandmothers,
a person living in the house
could be authorized.
but now it's anybody. And the sorry, Mark. There is a provision, I think, that says you have 72 hours to turn in the ballot. So if you were to wait on that, you could get in trouble for not turning in the ballot in time.
Promptly.
Part of what you described in the earlier part of your presentation was that the county has a check to see that people don't vote twice.
Yes.
Suppose I got to where I was going to do an in-person vote, or I mailed in my ballot, and the system comes up saying I already voted, whether somebody used my name or somebody put a wrong entry into the system or whatever. How does
Provisional ballots.
Yes,
There you go.
but how does the county decide which?
Okay, so let me go back 2 steps. So let's say you get your absentee ballot and you mail it in. The county has a really nice little app online that says, okay, we mailed your ballot on October 9th. We got it on October 15th. You're good. My wife and I both voted absentee. I mailed mine in. She mailed hers in, same day. Look, a week later, okay, they got mine, I'm on. They didn't get Susan's. Okay, well, wait 2 or 3 days, no mail, could be separated, whatever. Still nothing. Wait another week, still nothing. What happened? Where's her ballot? Election day, they still don't have it. So she went to the poll and voted by a provisional ballot, and that way she could vote. And what they do is when they have a provisional ballot, they'll check your name against the registrar's list to make sure the signature matches or is close to a match. And then they'll say, do we have any other ballot for this person? If not, we'll count the provisional. If we do, we'll toss the provisional. So you can't vote twice. Now let's say you vote, they think you voted already. You know you didn't. And so you do a provisional, you're signing a form. I'm not quite sure how they're going to do it with the new system, but basically you'll be signing a form somewhere saying it's you. They'll keep that as a provisional ballot. They'll go back and say, okay, well, someone in Long Beach signed, and this is their signature. And it doesn't look like your signature at all. And they may even call you, say, you ever been in Long Beach? I say, I've never been in Long Beach in my life. I'm not sure whether they'll be able to disqualify the other ballot or they'll simply count yours, or they'll say, well, you've been a victim of fraud and, too bad.
I don't know the answer to that either, and I'm not going to try and speculate on behalf of the county. I think they do have measures in place that tell them how to handle that situation. I'd be more comfortable if Jeff Klein were here to answer that. Maybe Martha has the answer to that.
I have the answer to one, is that if you show up and basically you had a mail-in ballot there and you think, you know, what happened and I'm going to vote, is they have the capacity to spoil that ballot at that moment, even if you don't have it to turn in, because you think what happened, and then you can vote regularly. Now, this other situation, I also am not absolutely sure, but if their capacity is to spoil a mail-in ballot, they can also spoil, you know, any other, and record that you're going in provisional. But I think you do need, like, the registrar recorder.
I'm not sure what they'll be able to do of it inappropriately cast ballot. Anyway, our time is just about up. Let me briefly summarize. Your vote is safe.
Excuse me,
Yeah.
you've not looked
Oh,
over here, there
okay.
have been questions over here. So could I just say one thing before you do that?
Sure.
All right, this is a two-part presentation, so Martha is also going to get involved in this presentation. And if your question was missed, John, then we'll have them both available for questions. So
And I will stay around.
let's
So
summarize.
one last question.
Electoral college question. What about proportional voting for electoral college votes? As it is now, if you vote, there's a certain segment of the voters whose voice is not heard.
So most states, all but 2 states, all or nothing. You win by 1 vote, you get all 37 votes from Florida. Nebraska and Maine do it by congressional district. 2 states, two votes for each state, winner take all. Each congressional district, winner of that congressional district gets 1 vote. And there have been some thought from Republican circles in particular to go to proportional voting for some states, particularly when they lose those states, so they get some vote, yeah. I like winner take all. Yeah, I think it provides a certain clarity and simplicity. Anyway, to summarize, your vote is safe, your vote will be counted, don't worry. We're a model for the country. They could do well to follow our lead. LA County is a model for the state, I think. And as for other states, I think we do need to remain concerned as other states lag behind due to negligence or intentional attempts to suppress voting, and the League has been one of the national leaders in efforts to call those states to account, to point out their either negligence or malevolence, and to combat efforts to suppress voting. And I think the League ought to be applauded and ought to be encouraged to continue doing so. Thank you.
Great. Okay, John is going to hang around. Let's hear part 2 of this from our own Director of Voter Services, Martha Zavala. Can you get close? Okay.
Okay, does this work? Yeah. Good morning, everybody. And hopefully they can hear it is. So I am going to be the very quick legal disclaimer version and picture portion of his presentation. So mine has pictures to go along with a lot of the material you've already heard. So hopefully I can walk through it, and then at the end, if you have some more questions. So I am, next slide, please. Okay, some of the pictures don't come out, but if you'll look way down at the bottom, it says registered voters, 5.3 million. We are larger than 40 states. LA County is. Those are registered voters. It's not all the eligible ones, because we still have 1 million more to try to register, and I know that as voter services, that is our mission. However, we would be so happy if just the ones that were registered actually showed up. Instead of the sometimes we can reach in a presidential election 65%, something like that, but if 85% of the ones that are already registered just showed up, it would be fantastic. So anyway, what we're trying to do, because our county is so large, is we're trying to augment the voice of the registrar recorder. That 0.3 million, those are 300,000 voters that actually cover our service area. That's how many voters we have. And we want to reach as many of the high propensity voters as possible because they're the ones that are really going to notice the differences and have the concerns, some of the same ones you've expressed today. Next slide, please. So basically the new voter experience, unfortunately, I think we have the light blue. This is their presentation, and it's very, very hard to read. But basically, this is an implementation of the Voters' Choice Act that was brought into a law in 2016 that says basically we're going to this vote center model, trying to reach more voters on a number of things. There were several California laws passed, like concurrent elections, and then an LA County only initiative to go ahead and reverse the order of the ballot, where when you go in March 2020 at the primary, you're going to see your city council race first, and you're going to have to wend your way down the ballot in order to see the presidential election. President and senator will show up last whenever there's an election and it's running. That was the Portantino law that passed for LA County. And in 3 years, there's going to be a report due, but we may talk about that if we have time. Anyway, the new voter experience here, I can't even see. I don't have my own PowerPoint in front of me. But basically, this is the new tally system that was already approved and is being certified by the California Secretary of State. So everything has to go through a certification process. As a matter of fact, this entire new voter experience, it is required under the law that there be a public hearing on the election administration plan. And there is, in the timeline, in October, the Registrar Recorder is going to release that and allow people to weigh in on various aspects that they've designed. So that's, again, the transparency that John was talking about that we have here, definitely in LA County and in the state of California. So everybody's going to be able to take a look at that, and perhaps we'll be able to post that on our website, send an email related to when it's been released.
Will there be a second hearing to talk about how well that plan was implemented?
Yes, there's going to be a post implementation hearing. So in here, we have, I can't see my own image. Can we? Yes, read that.
Interactive sample ballot.
It's the interactive sample ballot, and basically what that means is that in order to save a lot of paper, many of you can go ahead and indicate and ask for an interactive sample ballot only and no paper, because 5.3 million registered voters is a lot of trees. Along with any wrapping information and any postage and things like that. So you would have access to the interactive sample ballot. And basically you can also just go online on the registrar's website and download it onto your device, whether that be your cell phone or your computer. And then you can actually fill it out that way. You have no paper, and you can carry it around with you and decide, 5 weeks in advance what you want to say, but maybe wait to hear some more news for another 2-3 weeks before you actually, even if you have a vote by mail ballot, right, you can still fill it out on the interactive sample ballot and kind of think about it and decide what you want to do ultimately. So that's another piece of this implementation that's going to take place. And then on the next one is the actual ballot marking device. It's standalone. All of us are going to have the same device to use. I don't know how many of you actually show up in person. I saw a lot of vote by mails, but if you ever did it, it's the same machines from 1968, so I'm sure you've all seen them. And they used to have different ones available for people in wheelchairs and, different kinds of devices. This is everybody. One size fits all because they worked very hard. This is an aerial view down here of what the actual vision of it as you stand in front of it, but we'll see more about that later. So this is going to be this one device that's just a standalone, and really is, it's like your toaster. It's going to be plugged into some electricity, and your ballot, your piece of toast, you stick it in there and it comes right back out, and that's what's going to be counted, your toast, right? So, and then the other thing is the wonderful thing, I think, is that we're going to have, is this time to vote. And so under this new law, I think we had talked about how they're going to be up to 1,000 vote centers. They may start with 250 that are open for 11 days. So if you go shopping and somewhere local, you'll be able to do your voting there, especially if you're carrying around your sample ballot on your cell phone. You know, you'll be able to do that, and it won't matter where it is. So if you work in, let's say we talked about Long Beach already, you work there and you decide, you know what, I've got a little bit of time and there's a vote center just right there. I'm going to go have my lunch, then I'm going to go vote, because you've already filled it out. You're not going to waste a lot of time. So you can go ahead and just vote in those 11 days at the 250 until they ramp up for the last 4 days. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I think it's Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, whatever, Friday. All that weekend, right before the Tuesday election day, there'll be like 1,000 centers open with some of those large centers up to 50 machines at them for everybody to be able to vote. So no standing in line, hopefully.
Is that in the county of LA?
This is LA County's implementation. As you know, all 58 counties in the state are responsible for their own voting processes. They just have to get certified with the California Secretary of State. And of course, nothing fits LA County because of the size, so we are unique in that. Oh, okay. Oh, I don't know. I was, okay. So the vote by mail we already talked about, and that's a full-face ballot, and it was implemented in November 2018, and that's not going to change. And here is the process of the vote centers, where you can see that there is going to be a lot of capacity for people to actually be able to vote at those centers. Even though you lose your precinct, you're going to gain by the support that's here. And one of the important things, you may have heard this before and have seen this presentation before, but what our interest is that you really talk this up. Don't keep the information to yourself, because we're trying to reach as many people as possible, and we want people to have confidence. So one of the things here that allows us to be able to let you vote at any place and vote your ballot. You don't have to be at your precinct anymore. You will vote your ballot is the poll books, because instead of having 5.3 million, I don't know how many pages of rosters, manual rosters, it's this electronic version of the roster. They'll be the same at all 1,000 vote centers, and you can walk into any vote center and they will recognize you and they will find your specific ballot. And so you'll be able to vote on city council for Pasadena even though you're in Long Beach. Okay, you were saying we're running out of time?
Yeah. How many more
yes.
Can you?
Right, go forward.
Catherine.
Okay. So again, it's a self-contained unit. It is standalone, and once you feed your paper ballot that's produced out of this process, when you feed your paper ballot in there, it is captured. You don't have to hand it in to anybody after you voted it. You yourself will cast it and feed it into the repository that's going to be locked down and tracked. There's a chain of custody that goes from there all the way to Norwalk to the tally system. And of course, nothing's counted until 8 p.m. when the polls close. But here's a silent movie. If you scroll down, this is what you will see. So basically what you're seeing is what you would be doing. You wouldn't have to do the touch screen completely just next if you upload your own sample ballot from your cell phone, or with a printed QR code that you can print out of your computer when you use the interactive sample ballot. So it's quick voting. You don't have to stand there and do the individual punching.
The election is just around the corner, and Los Angeles County has a new way for voters to make their voices heard. New Los Angeles County vote centers are located throughout the county. Cast your ballot near your home, work, or favorite park. Voters can go anywhere. To find a vote center that's convenient, visit lavote.net and find one that works best for you. Instead of waiting for one day to vote, you are now able to vote across 11 days. Once you've arrived, a vote center assistant will greet you and check you in before taking you to the ballot marking device. Did you know that there is a new interactive sample ballot that lets you pre-mark your selections online and generate a poll pass? A unique QR code that will let you quickly transfer, review, and cast your selections on a paper ballot at the county vote center. The new ballot marking device includes an audio ballot, a touch screen, and a tactile keypad to make voting faster and more accessible. You can also select your language, change the font size, and adjust the contrast for easy viewing. Then, after you make your selections or scan your poll pass, you can review your ballot to verify your choices and cast your ballot by feeding the paper ballot back into the ballot marking device. There's no need to give your ballot to a vote center assistant. You cast it on the same device. Welcome to the future of voting in Los Angeles County. Fast, convenient, and easy. Go to vsap.lavote.net to exercise your right to vote and let your voice be heard.
You saw that the device then eats your ballot and keeps it there, and that is what's counted. The toaster that you've got that you produced that ballot from, that you produced the piece of toast, does not count anything. All it does is retain all precinct information in it. And with that QR code, it says, oh, you're from, this Pasadena district, this library district, this, and it narrows down to what you should be voting on. And so that's the important point of this. Now, in order to test the system, so to speak, and get people excited about it, the Registrar Recorder has a mock election that they've set up for September 28th and 29th. So you, your family, your children, your grandchildren, your grandmother, everybody will be allowed to vote. You do not have to be a registered voter. You don't have to be old enough to vote. You can be pre-registered. They will not turn anyone away, and there are fun questions on it. So, and then they're going to ask people to give their opinion about what happened. So they're going to mock up a real election, but in this particular date. So put that on your calendars. You need to be sure that you go. I think Villa Park in Pasadena is the location that's close to here. Duarte and Monrovia may want to go to Memorial Park in Azusa because it's only 10 minutes away. And I'll be working that day at Memorial Park in Azusa. Yes?
I just had a question. I couldn't see it on the, it went so fast on the dates. When does it actually, I'm sorry, the real election actually starts on February?
So yes, for example, the sample ballot, the interactive sample ballot will be available sometime in February, but March 3rd, our primary election, 2020.
11 days.
Oh, I see, February 21st. Oh, it's 22nd?
4 days ahead
22nd.
of it would be the 28th. That's when they'll have the
Yes.
standard number of votes.
Okay, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so we want to make sure there's on your table there, anybody who wants to volunteer to go ahead and help us get out the vote for the 28th and 29th. Please sign up. Yeah.
I have a question about the Voters' Choice Act, California. What I hear is excellent, but I fear that there's a considerable population that's not being addressed. Has there been funds or special training allocated to those people who have found themselves recently in circumstances where they don't have an address or they don't have access to electronic cell phones or computers.
Exactly, you're right. Getting out the vote is going to be one of the efforts that we have to put out into effect now. You do not need an interactive sample ballot in order to use this. You can go and come into the vote center and simply do your choices the way many people do. There are some unfortunate voters who don't prepare in advance, and kind of hear about the election and are excited. So
the issue is the front loading. Are there funds allotted to reach this population that won't even get to that point of getting a sample ballot?
are you talking about for the league or for just in general? Okay, no, I think they're people who
don't have an address.
Well, if they're registered already, it doesn't matter that they don't have a home address because you get their cross streets or a let's say capital.
Use the word homeless.
Yes.
Find themselves without an address and they're living.
Some of them are already registered, and it is true they may be mobile and not registered in the same area, but that is what the effort should be to get out the vote. There is same-day registration under this system. They can be taken even if they're not previously registered, and they will be able to get registered even though they don't have a home address. They ask them, where do you set up where do you sleep at night, basically, because this is the place where you need to vote and determine what should be done in this area. That is why we give them the home addresses, right? This is your residence or your precinct of residence, and they will be allowed to vote. But in terms of specific funds to go after them, it's all of us together and all of our community partners to get to them.
Martha, I have a question. Since they're doing away with the precincts, the candidates that are running for elective office, will they be able to still have access to high propensity voters since there's no precincts?
They're not doing away with the precincts. Everybody's still going to be assigned to a precinct. So the candidates will be able to track who's voting and how they're participating. Though that doesn't change. It's just your ability to go anywhere to any vote center.
Okay.
That's what's changing.
Okay, but I thought I heard one of our speakers say that the precincts were going away.
Your local polling place.
Your polling places, your neighborhood polling places are going
But they're
away.
still gonna have precincts,
Yes,
right?
That's correct. That's how you identify individual voters, where they live. Their address is assigned to a voting precinct. That allows them to be, gives them the eligible races for them to vote in.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
People without internet and without transportation, will they get a sample ballot?
If they're registered already, they will receive a sample ballot based on a paper sample ballot. Those are not being done away with. Only if you sign up and say, don't give me a paper ballot, then you will only get an electronic one. You give them your email, they'll send you the electronic one. But everybody has an opportunity to still go to the lavote.net and actually search and see what your ballot is. They don't know, but they still get the paper ballot.
LAvote.net, right?
Yes.
LAvote.net. Check.
So, the mock elections, what do we have to do in September?
Well, one of the requests is there's a sign up on your desk. We need to get as many people out there and interacting with the new technology as possible so that people start feeling comfortable with it. Because you need to hear things a couple of times before you even have a question sometimes, or you start to feel confident. We need to have people confident that their vote is being protected, and it's very important that they get exposed to this well in advance. You don't want somebody showing up and hit cold.
And to bring a friend.
Bring a friend.
Bring a friend, family,
Yes.
children.
It's a great experience for the kids to be able to see what you're gonna do on March the 3rd or whatever the date is, so bring them.
So if we sign up for Get Out the Vote, for them, what exactly will we be doing?
Well, one of the things is we had tried in the November 2018 election is we actually went out into shopping centers. We did all of that, and this time, because we know it's going to be really hot, is that we want to have a driver who will take a team of 2 or 3 people. We need a team lead just to make decisions about where do we go to next. But the expectation is on those 2 days is we know there's a local mock election center. We're going to send as many people as possible and interest them in doing it. Of course, we have to advertise in advance. It happens to be National Voter Registration Week right beforehand, so we will be advertising that in every site that we're registering voters. So we need a lot of help. We need more than your goodwill. And thank you. Yes. Yes. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. We will be posting the 50 mock election sites that the registrar just released yesterday. We will be posting that on our website so you can see where all the places are. So you're not restricted to Villa Park in Pasadena. You can go to any of the 50 in the county if you want to drive to Lancaster. No. Okay. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Martha. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. All right, so a lot of information for you today. Some of it may have been new, some not so new, but as Martha is saying, this is a new process, so we have to get accustomed to it. We need to understand it. So I think the mock elections gives all of us an opportunity, and I want to hold you a little accountable here with that by saying to Jon that through the League of Women Voters, we're going to make sure that California is no longer a boring state to vote. All right? So get out there in the mock elections, have some fun, take your children. I think this would be an exciting opportunity to say, come, let's go to the polls. And then you can, take selfies at the polls, put them on social media. Your grandkids will do it. Just tell them and say, look, 3 generations at the polls, let's do this. Let's do this. Okay, thank you very, very much. Let's give our speakers a great hand. And I'm going to ask Jon if you will come up for a second. We like to give our visitors who speak and put in a little time, a little gift.
Thank you very much.
So these are some sweets.
My
They're
wife's
seasoned.
favorites.
See, then, you can make this into a thing. We want to thank you so much for
My
your
pleasure.
time today, and we appreciated what you did for us. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. So I don't see a bag from a box of candies for Martha, but Martha, but Martha is our director of voter services, and she is all over the place and doing great work. And this work really does take a village of people. So we're a village of volunteers, and please know that you are needed in this group. I have one more thank you to give, and this is to a person that many of you will know this name, but you probably will not know this face because this person has been the editor of the League's Voter for 7 years. Do you all know the name I'm talking about? Every time you read your voter, it's in there. It says editor. It's a DD. A DD. Dawn Dawson, would you come up for a second, Dawn? Surprise, surprise. So Dawn has been working full-time and being the editor of The Voter. Now take that on. So she hasn't been able to make league days. And she said last night at our communications meeting, Dorothy's meeting, and she said, I'm excited about coming to League Day because I never get to come. She's recently retired. So welcome, Dawn, and thank you. It's a gift for you. Okay, as I say this, I would like, how many of the committee chairs have a brief announcement or something today? You have a brief, all right, will you start lining up somewhere over here while I go through this? No talking, just line up if you have something to say. Jody Kennedy is back there. Jody, is she still there? She had to leave, okay. Kenny, yes, what did I say?
Kennedy.
Oh, Kenny, no, Kenny. There are some T-shirts. Are we still doing that? Okay, Marianne has it. Marianne Finney. There are T-shirts available for sale today. And if you'd like to see what they look like, we have a couple models. Michelle is already up modeling. And I think Alicia is modeling over there. So you can get your T-shirt. Remember, you got a lot to do. September 28th, 29th, you want to be out there with all of your paraphernalia. And if you didn't get a wristband, you can get that at the table as well. I have a few announcements, but I'm going to ask the committee members to come speak, and let's make this as brief as possible. You know I will time you, okay? So let's start with Anita. Give your committee.
I'm the Housing Study Committee Chair. We completed our renters problems segment, and we are now working on affordable housing and how we get it built. Our next meeting is next Friday morning. That's September 13th, I believe, at 10 o'clock at the League office.
Very good. Thank you. She's on time. Yes, go right ahead. Sure.
No clapping.
No clapping.
No clapping. I'm Cheryl Rose. I'm one of the co-chairs for the membership committee, the ones that are nagging you at this present time. All the things that are coming up that everybody's been talking about, it all takes money. And so we really are looking for everyone to participate. At the present time, we're about 38% participation. We've had a lot of people renew today, and I'm so happy about that. So please get your membership in as quickly as you can. The other thing I wanted to announce is that we're having a meet and greet for new members. We haven't done this for a while. So everyone that has joined since 2019 will be receiving an Evite. So be looking for that. And Marilyn here has donated her home. It's going to be, and Roger, yes, has donated her home for this. It's on October 6th from 2 to 4. So we're looking forward to seeing all the new members. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Elsa.
Hi, Bob and I are, I'm Elsa Pendleton, and my husband and I are co-chairs of the Immigration Committee. As you all know, immigration is such a moving target, and we have a lot of things to talk about and learn about. Our next meeting is tomorrow at 1 o'clock at the League office, and we hope to see everybody here. We do need everybody's voices and ideas.
Thank you, Elsa. Go ahead, Maureen.
Okay. I'm Maureen Johnston with Natural Resources. The Global Climate March is in downtown LA, March the 20th, 12 to 3. The state, September, what did I say, November?
March.
March, well, there you go. It is a March. Okay. And it's in downtown LA anyway, September 20th. And you know, everybody is encouraged to, the State Association is encouraging everybody to attend, to wear your league clothing and carry, if it's a sign, carry a banner. And the Resource Committee, there's several of our members are going to be attending. So anyway, just to give that a boost. Downtown LA, Pershing Square. Okay. And
Probably a good way to go.
pardon?
Gold line probably the best.
Oh, well, a lot of us are going on Gold Line, but we're not meeting to go as a group, but just encouraging people to go. And the second item is, we have the flyers on the table for our League at Night in November, and we're expecting, did I say November? Help me. Okay. It's October the 17th, And it'll be at the Pasadena Community Center. Bring a friend. We're looking not just to have league members attend, but also people from the community. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. Yes,
Hannah McLaren, I'm co-chair of the Education Committee. And we did a lot of work this summer in our hiatus period. Most of the huge effort was tracking and supporting the charter school bills, AB 1505 and AB 1507, which was a nightmare. But we ended up machinations and ended up, though, through a lot of the work of members of the committee in being extremely successful outcome of transparency and oversight of charter schools. It was a very hard fight. We had a lot of meetings with Senator Portantino's office and his staff and talked with him. Nobody went to Sacramento, but we were prepared to do so if we had to testify. So that was the first thing. Our upcoming work is our commitment to voter registration in the high schools. And so as the Education Committee, that will be one of our major focuses with all hands on deck to work in high schools, and then extend that into our interest in civic education generally. So that's our work.
You're welcome. All right, Dorothy, communications.
Okay, I'm chair of the Communications Committee now, having done some other job before that. And with our wonderful new leader, she's pushing us and pushing us and pushing us. So some of you are going to be invited to participate in a mock of an e-voter. So we have a draft of an e-voter that we're going to be able to make available online, and we're going to just test it so we can kind of move forward. We're also going to have a good portion of the next yearbook online, and minus the directory, because we don't feel we can put it online quite yet until we get a secure password system. We also are in need of additional members, particularly in the area of social media, and I'm glad Pat asked how many of you knew about how to Twitter or how to tweet, and many don't, and so we need more people involved, and if you know some young people who would participate with us, that would be really great. And we also have a campaign that is part of the U.S. League, and it's called She Is Me. So do go on the website, and do look over at the left at our social media section, because you can read a tweet even if you don't have an account. And look at the wonderful things that are telling about our membership. She is me. It's just a little caption. And I'm just looking at a person sitting at her table, and that's Miss Higginbottom. Who's going to be up there. And we've got Pat to put something up, and we're inviting other members to tell their story about why you are a member of this absolutely marvelous group, the League of Women Voters Pasadena area, and what you are doing for the League and what it's doing for you. So we're busy in communications.
Would you tell them they could see Carol today?
Sorry, I was looking for you, Carol. Carol Cayley is our wonderful Twitter person. She is putting up all of our tweets and is doing a fantastic job. So you'll be up there today as a result of being at this meeting. Did you want to say something, Carol?
Show you how to tweet, and I can help you be part of this national campaign, She Is Me, by taking your picture today. And if you want to see me afterward, I will be happy to do that. We're telling your story in like 200 characters. That counts the spaces. So think about a really short way to tell what you believe in, what you're fighting for, and why you belong to. Thinking of your vote.
Great.
Talk to
Carol.
her.
She'll take your picture today, and then you can work on your story tonight and send it to her.
Email it.
Okay.
Well, we'll talk about it.
So, as you may have gathered, our committees are the lifeblood of LWVPA. This is where we all make democracy work, and every one of these committees would love to have new members. So on the piano over there in the corner, we have a handout which gives you some quick information about what each one of the committees does, and contact info for the chair, and a sign-up sheet if you'd rather just tell us right now that you're interested. Please check the piano before you leave. You don't have to commit, just find out when the next meeting is and drop in and see if it meets your passions and your interest, and get going, because that's how we do all our work. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, all committees. Yes, Chris. Excuse me? Okay, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Kitty from the Natural Resources Committee. I just wanted to say that the entire week of September 20th to 27th is going to be given over to worldwide youth protest strikes and educational events about the dangers that the youth and their children will face because of climate change. And I just wanted to tell you the dates. So September 20th, as Maureen mentioned, there's a youth climate strike, but it is at City Hall on September 20th, and it's from noon to 3. And then a week later, there's going to be actions all week, but a week later, there's a Pershing Square march from Pershing Square, and it is on Friday from 4 to 7 p.m. So different dates. And it'll be in the voter next issue, but
That's another one of those activities that I think having youth involved, if you have children and grandchildren, to get them involved in that kind of activity. We want to get our activists at a young age so they can carry this forward for us. All right, thank all of the committee chairs for that. I have one big announcement, but I'll try to run through it quickly. Many people have asked, and I've started getting a lot of emails about our centennial, which is coming up. Yeah, don't we have a centennial? Yeah, centennial. 100 years, 100 years, 100 years. So I want to give you a quick update on the centennial because I want to clarify something. There is a centennial date, which is February 2nd, that's my birthday actually, February 14th, 2020. That is the day the League will turn 100. However, the centennial campaign, I'll call it, is going throughout the year, right? So we want to talk about the centennial all the year, the whole year. When we get a chance, tell people, we're turning 100. People will say, oh my goodness, really? Oh, 100, blah, blah, blah. Then you can talk about the women getting the right to vote, and then you can go into your whole spiel, quick little elevator speech. But here's where we are right now. If you noticed in your last probably two voters at least, there's something called the Centennial Corner. And that will be an ongoing feature throughout our 2020 year where we will talk about different things about the centennial. I did say in the last Centennial Corner, and I just want you to know I haven't gotten any emails about this, I talked about a book, Votes for Women. Do you remember seeing that in your voter? Okay, and I invited people to have more conversations around the history of women getting the right to vote. There are some very interesting things that we want to bring to you throughout the year, but I want you to know that this is an ongoing column. We want to feature many of our members. There's lots of history to delve into around not only the 19th Amendment, but also the League of Women Voters 100 years. Everyone has a wristband, right? Okay. If not, get one at the table, wear it in recognition. The League of Women Voters is partnering with Pasadena Celebrate 2020. Many of you have asked me about that in the past, and let me just bring you up to speed on where we are. This is a group that is celebrating the women's suffrage movement and the ratification of the 19th Amendment. And it's really an alliance of the National Women's Alliance. It's a group of the National Women's Alliance. So that particular organization will have a float in the Rose Parade on New Year's Day. And The float, the design of the float, you can see it if you go online to their website. It's there. It's called PasadenaCelebrate2020.org. You can see their design. But they will have, I believe it's about 18 people riding on the float. And 2 of those people will be our very own Chris Carson, our national, our U.S. President, and Virginia Case, who is our U.S. CEO. They will ride on the float. They will most likely carry a League of Women Voters sign on the float. So we're going to be kind of right in there on the parade. When the parade ends, there will be a booth that says League of Women Voters. And we're going to be out there 100 strong, registering people to vote, giving them information about voting, whatever it is that we need to talk to people about. We're going to take advantage of that day. So that's part of our partnership with Pasadena Celebrate 2020. There will be more information about Pasadena Celebrates 2020. We're going to put it on our website. There are many, many more ways you can get involved with that. They're going to have some outwalkers in the back of the float, I think 100 people. Let me just caution you, you have to walk 100 miles. But here, 100 miles, excuse me, 5 miles, 5 miles. 5 miles, and it's flat. They tell me it's flat, okay? Another good opportunity, though, to maybe sponsor a young person and let them walk for you if you don't want to walk, right? You can sponsor a young person. And then the final thing on this right now is that we will be talking about this in the board meeting next week because they have asked us to select a day that the League of Women Voters would like to have a decorating day for the float. Wow. So that means that, you know, we can, again, gather there, we can register people there, we can do all sorts of good things around our work and still celebrate. And maybe after the decoration, they tell me there's a little place where you can do a sip and drink or sip and something, sip and soup, whatever it is, and we can have our own little celebration there. So just keep in mind the centennial, we're doing things for the entire year, but we're really ramping up so that on Valentine's Day, we will do something very, very special, and we're going to need everyone to participate in that activity. Okay? You with me? All right. Okay. I think we're at the end unless there's a real burning announcement that someone forgot. But it's burning. Quick. Yes.
On Saturday in Glendale at the Central Library, they're going to have a town hall about the proposition historic schools and communities first. About Proposition 13.
Yes.
Where they want to get businesses that are worth $1.5 million.
Yes, to pay the right.
Share of tax.
Great. Thank you for that. And that's great information. I live in Glendale, and it's Saturday. I might try to make that.
3 to 4:30.
3 to 4:30.
Across the street, they have free parking.
3 to 4:30. 3 to 4:30.
Town hall to get the information.
Out, right. Okay, great, great information. All right, thank you all so very much. Oh, let me just say this, a quick little preview. I need you to sign up pretty early for the October League Day because we will have a very special guest on October League Day. And since this is the best league in the U.S., you know, the 800 of them across the country, we're the best. Yeah. We have the Chief Executive Officer, Virginia Case, as our guest on October 3rd. So make sure you sign up for that one. All right, have a great day, great afternoon.